Hey everyone, Ryan here at eTrailer. Today on our 2024 Jeep Wrangler Unlimited, we're going to be showing you how to install the Blue Ox base plate kit. Before we get into that, let's just take a minute, we'll check this out and make sure it's going to be the right setup for you. Before we jump right in, I do want to address one of the main questions that we get asked when it comes to being able to flat tow your Jeep down the road safely behind your motorhome, and that's what parts am I going to need? There's going to be a total of 5 main components. You'll have your base plate, your tow bar, your safety cables, your tow bar wiring, as well as your supplemental braking system. This is what the front of your Jeep can look like whenever you're not hooked up to your coach and flat towing. And even though the base plate's going to be pretty much completely visible, I don't really think it looks out of place by any means, especially on the front of a vehicle like this Jeep here. The matte black finish it has almost matches the bumper spot on. So it doesn't really stand out too much or look out of place, you know. One of the benefits to having full visibility is it's going to be easy to see what you're doing when you're hooking up and everything else, and it gives you a ton of different mounting opportunities for some of your other components, right? So it already has a built-in bracket for your breakaway switch, built-in bracket for your electrical connector, and if you happen to have anything else, you know, you have such a lot of space here to work with to be able to get those components sorted. Whenever you are ready to flat tow, you can take the removable arms and put them into the base plate. So all that entails is just removing the protective caps that come with it to help keep dirt and stuff out. Then you just take the arm, put it in, rotate it about a quarter turn until it locks into place. And it'll be set up the exact same way over here on this side. The arms are going to give us the attachment point that we need to allow us to hook up our tow bar end. And you just line it all up, put that pin and clip through there. And even the safety chain openings I actually like on this base plate. They're kind of far off to the side, out of the way and easy to get to. Kind of just makes hooking up the hooks a little bit easier. And the base plate is going to be compatible with Blue Ox tow bars. A lot of the eTrailer and Dimco tow bars will work right out of the box with them, as well as a lot of the other manufacturers too. A lot of times you can get adapter ends. Let's say if you have a different brand tow bar already that you still want to use, but like this base plate, chances are pretty good you get that adapter in, change it over on your current tow bar, and that'll allow the base plate and that tow bar to actually pair together. This is what the front of your Jeep can look like whenever you are all hooked up and getting ready to flat tow down the road. And one of the things to really pay attention to with these Jeeps is what setup you got going on, primarily your bumper. So with this base plate, it's going to work with the factory plastic bumpers as well as the factory steel bumpers like we have here today on our Jeep. As well as some of the others, right? And that's why I say it's important to use our fit guide, the drop down menu, put in exactly what you got. And there's so many base plates out there. If you happen to have a different bumper, a different model or something, chances are really good there's going to be a solution for you. But as far as how everything looks when you're hooked up, I don't really think it can get a whole lot better, to be honest. Everything's easy to see, spaced apart evenly, it looks well organized, so you can't really go wrong. Compared to, let's say, the Roadmaster base plate, the Blue Ox, you know, you can see the whole thing, while the Roadmaster one, there's really no crossbar, nothing here that runs along the center. So it's a little more of a clean install look. So if that's what you're going for, you can always check that out. At the end of the day though, great all-around base plate. You know, I think it looks good on the Jeep, works with a lot of different tow bars, and gives you a really solid connection point. That way you can hook everything else up. As far as the installation goes, you know, it's not terrible by any means. I've done these base plates on Jeeps that have the plastic bumpers, and it's a little more simple. With our Rubicon that we have today and the metal bumper and the winch and everything, just a handful of more parts that are kind of in the way, so it took a little bit longer, but still not really too bad. Especially when you're talking base plates and getting them installed. With that said though, If this is something that you don't want to mess with, have the time or place, you can always use our dealer locator network. That can help you find a shop in your neighborhood that can set something like this up for you. But if you're going to do it yourself, hang around, we'll go ahead, pull into the garage, and get started on it now. To begin our installation, we're going to be at the front of our Jeep. First thing that we need to do is remove our bumper. Now, since this base plate does fit a handful of different models, your setup might be a little bit different. We happen to have the factory steel bumper and the factory winch. If you have the plastic bumper, all this stuff will be similar, but might be a little bit different. So keep that in mind. The instructions do a pretty good job of telling you what to take off and everything to actually get the bumper removed. On ours, we're gonna have this plastic piece here on each side of our vehicle. We're gonna remove it, take a flathead screwdriver, can pry up on the head of it and pull the base out. The other one is right here. I believe on the plastic bumpers there's just one on each side in the middle there. But from this point on, whatever we do to one side of our vehicle, we'll also do to the other side because it'll be set up the same way. We can get the underbody panel removed now. In our case, we have a metal one, and we have 5 13mm head bolts along this edge, and then one on each side, more towards the back. With the plastic ones, I believe there's just several push pin type fasteners along here, and then a couple screws on this side. I think there's 7 or 8mm head. But again, check your instructions. Go ahead, pull these out though, and get it removed. Just over here on our passenger side, we're going to have this electrical connector we need to disconnect. There's a little yellow tab. You can push back on that and then grab this gray part, pull up on it, and that'll release it. We're going to have a total of 8 nuts that we need to remove that are holding on our bumper beam. So on the outside portion of the frame rail, you have these two just like it on the inside portion, and then of course the other side set up the same way. You can use an 18mm to remove them. What I like to do is take one of them and just leave it on hand tight, one on each side like that. That way once we get all of them removed, if the bumper does want to come off the front on its own, it's not just going to fall off there. Here's what the two on the inside of the frame look like. Definitely not as much room, but I'm just going to use an 18 deep well socket and a very small extension, and that seems to be about a good setup to be able to get these off. We're going to need to remove our hook here. That way when we pull the bumper off, it'll actually be able to fit over the end of it. So you just have a little cotter pin. You can bend that straight. And pull that out. Remove that piece. And I'm just going to kind of put these back together loosely so we don't lose anything. And now the bumper should be able to slide off and around this piece. I'm going to support the bumper here, and while I'm doing that, I'll remove these nuts that we left on hand tight. Then we should be able to grab it removed and set it off to the side. These brackets on the outside portion of each one of our frame rails, we're going to remove those. There's this one 16mm head bolt. We can pull all this stuff out of the way. On this plate, you'll see that there's two holes in it. This bottom one, it's more oval shaped. We do need to enlarge that just a little bit, really so we can just get the hardware inside of the frame. So you need to make it a little bit bigger than the size of this handle nut here. I drew that out, and I'm just going to use a Dremel tool, the little cutoff wheel on here to get this material removed. Once it's pretty close, a lot of times you can just take a little punch or something and knock that piece out of the way. And I like to take a grinding bit and just kind of smooth out some of these rough edges. Since we have that little bit of bare metal exposed now, not a bad idea to come back with some paint and put a coating on it to help prevent rust and corrosion issues in the future. We're ready to put our base plate into position now, and the first hole that we're going to be dealing with will be this one. And you can take this bolt, put on the appropriate split lock washer and flat washer. So you're going to have a total of two ready, one for each side. And those are going to line up with that threaded hole right there that was originally holding in that little bracket. So what we can do, we'll take our base plate here. Start to get it into position. Line those up and get this started hand tight on each side. Since you are able to kind of maneuver the base plate back and forth, since it's just in there hand tight, you want to take a level and just make sure that the base plate's going to be level on each side. And once you find that, you come back with a 17mm and snug down the two bolts. We can use this hole in the base plate as a template to drill a hole through the frame. So come back with the appropriate bit and go through just this first layer of the frame rail. For this attachment point, there's already a hole in the side of the frame, and from my experience, the vast majority of the time they don't line up perfectly. So if that's the case with yours, like ours is, you can come in with a drill bit or a grinding bit like this and just completely open it up. We'll get this attachment point started first. You're going to take one of these bolts, put on a split lock washer, and you'll use a handle nut to secure it on the other side. And what I suggest doing before you do anything really is make sure that bolt threads in there easily. Sometimes some welding, slag and stuff can get caught up in them threads when they're making these and kind of make it tricky to start. And by doing that, it usually clears it out. And you're going to want to take some red Loctite, put some on the threads there, and the handle nut, there's a big opening right here. You'll put that in the frame like that, and then line it up with the attachment point. And take your bolt. I'll just get that started hand tight. What you want to do now, this bolt that we put in first, you want to loosen that up. That way the base plate can kind of draw itself outward. And for this attachment point, you'll have that same hardware combo, just a bolt, split lock washer, put your Loctite on, handle nut. And with this though, you're gonna have a spacer block that's gonna sit in there like that. So the bolt will pass through base plate, the spacer block, as well as the frame. We'll get our handle nut, and this time it'll go through that opening on the front that we enlarged. With this one hand tight now, I back this bolt out pretty much all the way. I don't really want to completely remove it and risk having it, lose its position. But I pulled it out quite a bit, and that way I can take some red Loctite and just put a drop down through there. As long as it hits the threads, we'll be fine. And now we can come back and snug everything down. For the new bolts, you can use a 3/4 inch socket. Before that Loctite cures, you want to make sure to come back with a torque wrench and completely tighten down all the hardware to the amount specified in the instructions. I'm going to come back now with a pair of snips and the remaining portion of those handle nuts. You can go ahead and just clip them out of the way. At this point, what you can do, take the safety cables that they give you and attach them to the base plate. So I just use a D-link, put it around this opening in the base plate, took the safety cable, wrapped it up and over the frame rail, and attached them down here. Something I like to do is come back with some zip ties and just kind of secure it every now and again. That way it'll look a little bit cleaner in my opinion, and you won't have to worry about these clunking around or anything when you're going down the road. At this point, it'd be a great time to maybe start thinking about installing some of your other flat towing components like your wiring, your braking system, things like that. And I say that because with the bumper out of the way, definitely have a little more room to work and route stuff and everything. So that's exactly what I'm gonna do. And once I have that complete, we'll come back, get the bumper back on and the underbody panel reinstalled. I got our other components hooked up here, our wiring, our breakaway switch, things like that. And so now at this point, we can go ahead and get the bumper reinstalled the opposite way that we removed it. If I happen to run into any fitment issues or anything, we'll touch base on them then, but we should be able to just put it right back together. And then we can focus on seeing if we need to modify the rock guard and things like that to get it back in place. Our bumper went back together without any issues, no changes there. And as far as the belly pan, in the instructions it shows one of the plastic ones. I didn't see the metal one like we have. So we're just gonna have to kind of use our best judgment. I'm just gonna hold this up and I made a couple of marks in it. I'll remove that material, see if it fits, and kind of go from there. A little bit at a time here to really try to do a good job and make this look as best as we can. This is pretty thick metal, so I'm going to use a cutoff wheel to get the material removed. I got the rock guard trimmed out to where it's going to fit and everything, and then I came back, and this is just wire loom I put on the edge just to make it look a little bit better. At the hardware store and stuff, they sell a bunch of this type of trim and things like that. You can kind of get creative if you want to. But as far as the measurements go, to give you a rough idea, so as far as the width it's about 1.25 inches, give or take. And then if you measure from the top down, I cut about 6 3/4 inches. And then these two small openings, they're probably 1.25 inches wide, roughly an inch, and just kind of down to this first thing here. And that's to allow our wiring to pass for our breakaway switch and our diode wiring. You may or may not have to do that. It just kind of depends on how yours is set up and everything. But if we were to try to install this, it would have smashed our wiring there. So that's why I cut those out, and now we can get this reinstalled. I got everything reattached and put back together, and I think it turned out pretty good. So with that wrapped up, that'll finish up our look at and our installation of the Blue Ox base plate kit on our 2024 Jeep Wrangler Unlimited.